This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. The former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt's written in the Evening Standard warning the UK needs to massively speed up its coronavirus testing system. He says it needs to be a 24-hour turnaround time. It's currently a median of 48, and he's been told a care home in his constituency had to wait a week for results for some of its residents. Our editorial column says the government isn't giving the country what it was promised.
International comparisons show Britain has had one of the highest COVID-19 death rates in the world, overtaken on current numbers only by Spain. What's the route out of this disaster? Quick, large-scale testing to find those who have been infected, a capable system to trace people who have come into contact with them, and clear rules on isolation to stop them spreading it further. Countries such as South Korea and Germany, which have done well in the fight, have been doing this for months. Here, at last, it's happening too. Next week, we will see if the system works. Early wobbles, such as staff not being able to log on to the system, are understandable, but officials now say it will take until the end of next month to get it running at full speed. That's not what the Prime Minister promised 9 days ago when he told MPs,
"We will have a test, track and trace operation that will be world-beating, and yes, it will be in place. It will be in place by June the 1st.
A lot needs to happen fast to even get close.
Our comment editor Susanna Butters with me. And Susanna, in his column for The Standard, Jeremy Hunt seems to suggest that at least in terms of testing, the country is not quite ready to come out of lockdown.
Yeah, in his piece today, Jeremy Hunt says that the government have done a lot, and we clearly do have the capacity for, as Boris Johnson put it in his very Boris Johnson way, a world-beating system. But it kind of sounds like they've started without quite being ready. He says there's no point doing it if you can't let people know immediately. And at the moment, it's taking 5 days. He says that for it to work, we need a 24-hour turnaround of tests, which is why it worked in South Korea and Taiwan. And you need the testing capacity to do that. You need the volunteers. So there's still a lot of logistics. What he doesn't say is maybe there's an element of the government were firefighting for a long time. Lots of them were ill. Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, Matt Hancock, they were all out of action for a long time. So there is an element of playing catch up with all this.
And yet we have met the 5 tests that Boris Johnson set to ease lockdown. People will be starting to leave their houses from Monday. But do you, Susanna, believe that there is a confidence to get up out of the sofa and out of the house after so many weeks of being inside?
I think it might be a feeling fed up rather than a confidence. I think it's sunny. There's people think the disease can't spread if they're outside. There's a sense that kind of we've been through so much. Now it's the time to see people. But I think it's a very varied picture. I think there's a lot of people who are still really scared. And these kind of strange dribs and drabs of uncertain rules aren't helping. There's people saying kind of, well, what's if I can see 6 people? Why can't I see 8 people? And it's just all a bit confusing still.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's going to be a big celebration. We are apparently allowed to have barbecues, but I wonder how many people actually will.
And whether they'll have 2-metre-long skewers to keep everybody apart. And I mean, it's mixed, because there's, on the one hand, it's wonderful to see businesses in London reopening, selling iced coffee and Aperol Spritz, and people coming out again. Like, London isn't a ghost town anymore, and that's brilliant. But on the other hand, I think people are still processing a lot of trauma. I think people will be scared to go on the tube. People don't know how far to push the rules. And there's still this odd sense of you can see people, but you can't hug them. We still need that clarity and that security. And I don't know if we're going to have that for some time. So, I mean, there's a kind of mental recalibration going on. There's also the sense that this week's been catastrophic for trust in the government after Dominic Cummings, which I think could undermine the track and trace if they're asking you to isolate. and people are doubting their behaviour, I'm not sure how that's going to pan out.
Yeah, it's trust and that clarity on rules. And right now, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of either, does it?
Yeah, no trust, no clarity. We've just got to hope that we've seen the peak. We've got to look at other countries. And yeah, but I think that the track and trace app could be promising. And as Jeremy Hunt says, we built a Nightingale hospital in 10 days. We can turn things around quickly if we put our minds to them and target them in the right way.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.